Hey, everybody. Okay, so Rana, Denise, Kristen, and Bernard. I snapped this picture like 30 seconds ago when it was just the four of you. And I thought, what a crazy dinner party that would be. So we haven't gone fully live yet. But what a crazy dinner party that would be. Welcome, everyone who's here. Welcome, Sandy. Welcome, Rana, Patricia, Susan, Denise, Bernard, and Kristen. Thank you all for being here. Yes, Kristen, I'm totally excited to have me go solo today, too. Yeah, having myself in the spotlight. Not so bad. Bernard, it's rainy. I forget where you are. Where are you? Where are you in the world? Bring them cookies. No, they're already gone to my neighbors. Pittsburgh, right near Philly. Well, not near, in Pennsylvania. That's right. I forgot about that. You coming to Toronto anytime soon? All right. Hey, if you have any questions for me, chat's probably where I'm going to find it the easiest. We also do have a handy dandy ask a question button under there. I'm not sure where it is. Yeah, so welcome. If you're watching from Facebook, because we've just started the broadcast, come on over to Crowdcast. I actually can't see your questions over on Facebook, so you need to come on over to Crowdcast and ask your questions over here and join these delightful folks who have joined me live. And if you're going to be listening to this after the fact, because now In the Spotlight Live with Tanya Geisler is a podcast, be sure to sign up so you find out when the next one is coming out, and do join us live. We have lots and lots of fun. So In the Spotlight Live with Tanya Geisler is a weekly-ish show. I laugh because this show, this Ask Me Anything solo show, was actually supposed to be last week. And last Thursday was my birthday. And I had a very special birthday offer that I issued. So normally, if you're new to the show, I have a guest, somebody that I really admire. Last time we had Tiffany Hahn. Next week we're going to have Vanessa Mentor, and I talk to them about the mindset challenges that they face in their business often in and around the imposter complex, and how they move past that. So that's normally what I do, but today is the makeup for my birthday. So I issued this challenge, and I wanted people to submit $50 donations to the charity or the social cause of their choice. And in return, I would send them the Star and Roll playbook, which is my pride and joy. It's just my everything, all rolled into one beautiful 11-week digital program. And so we had great systems behind the scene. The team was going to take care of all the automated pieces that would come in. But the emails that I kept getting were so beautiful and heartfelt in response to my appeal that I found myself at my desk all day responding, tears. So at a certain point, I just needed to get up and go do some yoga. So I thought, birthday gift to myself, I'm going to run the show next week when I'm fresh. And with the news that we exceeded my goal of $4,000 raised to various charities. I have a massive list. Went to hurricane relief, it went to Red Cross, it went to NPR, homelessness, research. The list goes on and on and on. So I am fiercely proud, fiercely happy, and the reason I wanted everybody to receive a copy of the Star and Roll playbook was to offer people the tools for them to step into their own leadership. It's easy to get lost and trapped in a feeling of helplessness when there's so much bad, so much negativity happening. So the Step Into Your Star and Roll playbook offers you the tools to move into leadership. So I promised that I would sing my thank you. So we'll do this very fast. I want to thank you, 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 thank you. Anybody else remember Natalie Merchant? That's it. I'm done. I have sung. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have some fantastic questions that have been coming in by email and from people pre-chat, but I will keep my eye on the chat over here. So please let me know if you've got any questions and I will get to them. Thank you. I have a lovely voice. Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you. Bernard says, it moved me to a new height and now I'm likely impatiently waiting for the next module. I'm blown away by this generosity. I really appreciate it. Thank you, darling. And I really, really, really hope as a playbook holder that you're going to join us on the office hour calls, which are every month starting tomorrow. So if I get 2 days of Bernard, that's a beautiful thing. Okay, so I'm going to start with some of these fantastic questions that came in. So I'm going to go ahead and make the wild assumption that if you're on this call, you've heard me talk about the imposter complex a great deal. So I'm not going to do my usual tying it into the imposter complex. It's just going to show up organically. And if you're new to the podcast, be certain to review some of the earlier episodes where I really dive deeply into what the imposter complex is about. So you'll notice a thread, though. I had invited people to ask me anything about where my imposter complex shows up, parenting, business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So great questions have come in. And the first one is, I'm not going to do the whole name thing. People don't need to know who asked the question. How did you decide your area of expertise was the imposter complex? So thought about this an awful lot. So this question was related specifically to speaking. Actually, most of the questions are related to speaking, which I found kind of interesting. Very few about parenting. So the shortest answer is, in late 2012, I was invited to do a TEDx talk. And oh my goodness, there is nothing like the pressure, the excitement of getting that kind of an invitation for you to get real clear, real specific, real focused on what it is that you want to talk about in 20 scant minutes. It was a challenge upon a challenge. It was huge. So up until that point, let me just say this. In all of my jobs, everything that I had done, all throughout my career, I have been speaking, whether it was client pitches, and it was always the part of my work that I loved the absolute most, the presenting, the performance, if I'm being honest. So my very first talk, I was just thinking about this, was a keynote. It was back in like 2008. So I'd only been in my business for like about a year. It was called Be the Elastic Band. So I didn't know the language at the time, but I was talking about resilience. I was talking about vulnerability. I was talking about all sorts of great things that, of course, Brene Brown has just blown out of the water in really profound ways. But really and truly, I was talking about anything anybody wanted me to talk about. But when it came to pitching what I was talking about, these were the topics I kept coming back to. So I was talking about resilience, I was talking about vulnerability, I was talking about values, I was talking about goals, I was talking about time management, I was talking about absolutely anything and everything. And that made pitching really tricky, really challenging, because it was just too much for people to choose. So not only was that TEDx invitation just incredibly valuable for the ego, not gonna lie, and really deepened some really profoundly important friendships, such as my dear Rana, who's on this call. It also really had me focus in and land the plane. What was also really helpful about it was that the theme that we were offered was the space in between. So I decided I wanted to talk about the space in between what we think is real and what is actually real. So as a coach, that felt like all of the inner critic work. All of the inner critic work is really tricky to talk about in an 18-minute process. So what I did was I looked at that point, it would have been 7 years that I'd been in business, and kept looking at the through line that was impacting each and every one of my clients, particularly my leadership clients, and recognizing that this piece, what I came to understand was the imposter complex, ribboned through all of their experiences and was the thing in their way. And it had been the thing in my way. And Bishop T.D. Jakes talks about your ministry is where your misery has been. And surely the imposter complex was where my misery had been. And I had a process that I was sitting on top of that I didn't recognize as such until I had to sit down and write an outline for an 18-minute talk. And then it became very clear, and the angels sang. So that's how that happened. And it was such a gift. I mean, it was such, like, truly such a gift, because it's the lens through which I see everything. It's in my every conversation. My poor kid was asking me a very benign question this morning about intuition, and that came up then. And so it's the lens through which I see everything, and I can't unsee it. And I have no intention of stop talking about it anytime soon. So that's how that was. And I don't talk about elastic bands any longer. Okay, so what's the coping mechanism that you come up against the most often? So there are, like I say, I'm going to talk a little bit about the imposter complex and what it means. There are 6 behavioral traits that we go to: procrastination, perfectionism, comparison, diminishment, leaky boundaries, and people pleasing. And that is my particular brand. That is where I like to hide out. And so when I say coping mechanism, what I mean is this is the place, this is one of the behaviors that we go to avoid being found out as an imposter, as a fraud. So people pleasing is definitely the place that I go to. It is deeply important to me that people are, that they like me. And the double bind here for me often tends to be when I get invited to speak, when I get invited to interviews, I get stuck in the narrative that they've given me this opportunity just because they like me, not because I am actually deeply skilled and learned in my body of work and deeply talented. So this is where I can continue to come up against it. No matter how long I work my process, so what I want to say is, no matter how long I've been studying this and understanding this, I still come up against this, and then I need to work my process. I will say, though, that I recognize when it's happening, and I can do, as the Buddhist monks say, have a faster recovery. Something interesting happened a week ago. I have a 9-month program called the Academy. I don't know how that's showing up for you. And we had a beautiful gala here in Toronto. It's a celebration. And somebody was talking about the impact of the Academy, and was talking to a friend of mine, and said one of the things that they really loved about being in the Academy was watching me work. And they said that they really loved how I modeled strong boundaries. Well, you could literally knock me over with a feather, because I believe that boundaries were probably one of my biggest issues up until probably about a year ago. And then they just ceased being an issue. And I hadn't stopped to celebrate that I had done some great boundaries work with magnificent teachers like my friend Randy Buckley, who was on a webinar about boundaries with me a couple of months ago, and just really battening down the hatches of my own boundary work. But I hadn't stopped to pause and celebrate that. So it wasn't, I hadn't thought about it. But I have kind of healed that. I've also healed, in large part, my perfectionist tendencies. Procrastination still a little bit up my nose. Diminishment I have no problem with. And comparison, I've done some really deep work with the Beyond Compare program that I co-created with Lauren Bacon. So just to let you know that you might be struggling deeply with procrastination or perfectionism, over time, if you work the tools, it will shift, and you can heal those aspects. They might still come up, they might still crop up, but again, it's about the faster recovery. Bernard's saying, I'm so excited to have you here. Misery ministry, I know, right? So Bernard, I'll say this. Yes, your ministry is where your misery has been. I also say it's also where your joy has been. Like, lest we forget that we're also allowed to speak from our places of deep joy, because that's where healing has also happened. Okay, so people pleasing. Yes, totally, completely. Okay, so somebody asked me this. You're an expert in the imposter complex. It is true, I'm a reluctant expert on the imposter complex, but I have a feeling that you might still deal with difficulty feeling like a fraud sometimes, especially when it comes to reaching more people with your message. Tell me about a time you recently dealt with the imposter complex and how you handled it. So this is a great question. So for me, I'll put a little bit of a asterisk on this one, a little star on this one. My gut instinct is to say, for me, it's not so much about the size of an audience any longer. The asterisk there is that talk to me when the next audience is 10,000 people in the audience, right? Talk to me then, and then we'll see. But for the most part, I'm as comfortable in front of 3,000 people as I am in front of 30. And this is just true. When I'm up on stage, I'm fine. It takes the same amount of preparation for 30 people as it does for 3,000 people. I just get into the energy of it and it all feels super good, super familiar, and I am at home. And I feel very fortunate that that is true. It's also part of why I've built it into the structure of my business. That said, the imposter complex shows up on the precipice of something new. So the first time I spoke in front of 3,000 people, which I did in October. Was it October? Oh my God, a year ago. That was the biggest audience that I'd spoken to in the last year. Definitely felt that. Definitely felt it for sure. But subsequent numbers, 1,000 people, earlier this year, 1,500, it doesn't rankle me, and nor will it the next time. But it does show up for me when I look to evolve my message. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that it shows up on the precipice of something new, whatever that new is. So just as the first time you were asked to lead a team or launch a product it will show up in the precipice of that new. So I've been talking about the imposter complex for some years now, and I have a deep understanding of it. And I'm not any longer concerned about being challenged with what I know. The places of stretch for me happen when I speak about things that I haven't fully integrated. So I have always touched and named that part of what fosters the imposter complex is patriarchy, the systemic structures that are in place that continue to hold the patriarchy in place are the very things that can exacerbate the imposter complex. So I've always touched on that, but I haven't really spoken very pointedly about what that looks like on the ground. So back in a couple of months back, whenever International Women's Day was, I was really clear as a woman speaker. I was very aware of all of the privilege that had brought me to the front of that room. And so it wasn't going to be enough that I happened to be a white woman standing there. I really wanted to speak into more of an intersectional feminism piece. Well, oh well, oh well, this is new to me in conversation, and it did not go particularly well. It did not. There were crickets. People were not very much enjoying what I had to say. It was not what they really wanted to hear. So that definitely rankled my imposter complex, only because I didn't feel like the person who had done the most work to understand this aspect of the imposter complex. And so that's a stretch for me. That's a big stretch, because one of the huge things about the imposter complex is that it has you, it is supported, I guess, by your deep values of integrity, excellence, and mastery. So it's hard to be up there talking about something and saying, hey, I haven't done my full analysis on this, but this is something that is concerning my heart. This is a place that I'm looking towards, and a question that I want to bring into the fold as we discuss the imposter complex. So that was tricky. That was really, really tricky. And that definitely rankled my imposter complex. And, but here's what I did. I went back to all of my tools that I have, the 3 strategies that I'm always coming back to, which are meeting the critics, and bolstering my authority thesis, and assembling the cast. And so that meant that I needed to look at the questions of what's the worst thing that can happen? they won't hire me again. Okay, I get that. Doing my due diligence, I did that. Reminding myself every other time that I've had to say something that might not be wildly popular, and then I didn't die, right? Did that. Calling in the support of people who have far more difficult conversations than I do. Learning from my teachers, did that. So that's what I always come back to every time I come up against one of the challenges of the imposter complex, one of the lies of the imposter complex, one of the coping mechanisms. I come back to one of those 3 strategies. So that is a very long answer. Does anybody have any other questions that are here as I pull up the next ones, because of course my phone shut out. Okay, how can you share your work if you are afraid of being attacked, ridiculed, or misunderstood? So I think I really just spoke about this a little bit. But this really comes back to what I named just 30 seconds ago, but meeting the critics. You really just need to have a look at what is it that you're really afraid of, what are the consequences that you imagine to happen, and how do you mitigate them best that you can. I think also what just came in too was the impact versus intent conversation, I think, comes in here a little bit too. What is the how do you leave the world a little bit better after the conversation? That's where I would just land there. Okay, is that making sense? I'm going to go ahead and assume that it is making sense. Okay, what are some of the other questions here? All right, so you often talk about, oh, you know what? Let me just say this too about that last question. Fear of being ridiculed or misunderstood is also no joke. It's no joke. And I have deep empathy and compassion for those of you who are on the precipice of saying the hard things and feeling compelled to say the hard things. Deep compassion. Just go in as strong as you possibly can, and then really do look at that, and then kind of question. What happens? They won't like it. And then I think you'll know how you want to respond. Okay. How do you handle really, really, really big goals? So I have permission to share this, and I love this story. I have a client, I'm actually writing about this right now, who just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I think it's so great. So my answer to this is it's like my answer to how we do anything. It's we make a decision to do something. We make sure that it's aligned. We make sure that we make sure that we have the support. We make sure that we have the resources. We make sure that, and then we do the work. Okay. And so this is how, and then we do the work and then we celebrate. So this is always how we get from here to there, whether it's stepping into a starring role, whether it's climbing the Kilimanjaro, whether it's writing the blog post, whether it's whatever it is that we need to do. But you have to start with that desire to get from here to there. So great hearing this client tell me about how they did it. And it was like, this is something I've wanted to do. This is something that felt outside of my comfort zone. And it was really, really aligned with my values. So this values piece, anybody who's doing the starring role work knows that I talk about your brand of joy. So this is this place, this deep connection. This is the thing that you want to feel in all that you do. So whatever that goal is, let's make sure, in fact, that it is inextricably linked with your brand of joy. So in this case, Kilimanjaro was absolutely linked to this client's brand of joy. So then it's the meeting the critics, right? It's all of the like, I'm not strong enough. I don't have the gear. I don't have the experience, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the preparedness piece, right? So we need to meet the critics and find out what all of those objections are. So in this client's case, physical rigor, doing a lot of exercising, getting the gear, right? Buying the gear that's needed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And then apparently there's a 4-day acclimatization process, which I think is such a fantastic metaphor, an acclimatization process. So very cool. And then really, no one climbs this without assembling the cast. So in this case, this client, they had guides. And I actually thought there was such brilliant wisdom in what the guides had to teach the whole crew about what leadership actually looks like. And that's what I'm really going to be writing about more, because I just tell you, I'm just kind of blown away by what these guides do. And then you got to grind it out, right? You're not getting to Mount Kilimanjaro just with good gear and like tight buns. Like you got to grind it out and get up there. And then you got to celebrate. And so it was funny because I was talking to my man Greg about this, and he was saying, of course you're going to celebrate. Like, that's easy. No, actually it's not, because when you get to the top of the mountain, you still need to get down. So actually pausing, taking that moment in celebration is vital to your success. A little like I was saying about the fact that I had overlooked that I had healed my work with boundaries. I never paused in celebration. And so it didn't register that this is something that I had worked with. So I am such a proponent of celebration. So that's my client's experience of a big goal just achieved. It is the same process time and time and time again. Set the goal, make sure it's aligned, come up against the critics, bolster your authority thesis, remind yourself all the times you've tackled something super scary, didn't think you were going to get to it, then get the help you need to do it, grind it out, do the work, and then celebrate. Celebrate! All right. Okay. Next. Actually, I'm going to tell you a little bit about those guides, because I'm so fascinated by this. For me, this is a huge thing about leadership, which is another thing I talk about. So bear with me. It's not actually somebody's question, but I can tie it into another one anyway. So these guides, there were about 3 or 4 different things that I thought were such fantastic lessons about leadership. One was they recognized first of all, they insisted upon that acclimatization period, which I think is just genius to have that. So that's like no contact with the outside world. You are really, really, really focused on getting ready for that climb. Okay, so I thought that was great. The next one, though, was recognizing that where people are coming from, that there's a real urgency to their, I didn't even take a sip, I was just so busy showing you do the work. Hang on. A real urgency to their desire that people are going to rush. So they had this refrain, which is pole pole, which is Swahili for slowly, slowly. Okay, let's just pause there for a moment. Can you imagine if the leaders in your community were a little more about slowly, slowly than hustle, hustle, slay, slay, grind, grind all the time? I just feel that would be a little more spacious and beautiful. So that's the one thing. The next was they got up they started the final day of the climb at 1 in the morning. Pitch black, headlamps, that's it, pitch black. So apparently the guide said this was because of the midday heat, that nobody should be climbing during midday, and or that there might be other slower climbers that might not be able to get down in time. My client, however, is of the very wise opinion that it was likely had more to do with the fact that they knew that people would lose their minds if they actually saw how high they had to go. And that if they could just focus on the next step and then the next step and the next step. And for some reason, this makes me feel a little bit emotional. But when I think about leadership, really just holding the focus such that people can concentrate on what they need to get done, rather than constantly overwhelming with the sense of magnitude and urgency, I just feel like there's some beauty there too. And then the third piece, apparently right around the time when everybody started to really lose their steam, about 5 in the morning, can you imagine? 4 hours of climb, like, anyway, whatever. That apparently was when people really started to lose steam, and these guys started singing. First thing to notice here, they're singing. These people that are climbing can't even breathe, yet the guides are singing. So A, they're this model of possibility of what is available to you if you really stick with something. And they were singing spiritual hymns. And it just lifted everybody up enough such that they were able to continue the climb, get their energy, and get to the top. I loved that about leadership. And that felt very resonant for me, to be certain. Okay, and may that be so for you too. I am going to write more about that because I'm still really processing that. How do you cope with the fact that the imposter complex never really goes away? Okay, so this is one of the things I'm often talking about. We've got one more minute. I cannot seriously believe that we've only got one more minute. But yes, I do talk about the fact that it never really goes away. It's like a traveling companion, and it's a little like fear. It's not something that you will ever fully eradicate. Once again, it's something that you can recover from more quickly such that you can get into action. And you don't ever really want to lose it entirely because A, it's going to let you know that what it is that has triggered it is deeply important to you. It's also here to remind you of your values of integrity and mastery and excellence. These are beautiful, beautiful things. So I'm never about eradicating it. In fact, when I think about all the times that I don't experience the imposter complex, that just lets me know that maybe I've got a little more swinging out to do. So there's a little grief with the idea that you know more than you think, and you'll never know it all. And I think that's a good news, bad news kind of scenario. So thank you so much for being here with me. If you have any more questions, pop it in the chat and we can continue to go for a couple more minutes. But this broadcast is going to end any second now. Thank you all for having been here with me. And thank you for the happy birthday wishes, everybody. And I'll just stay here for one more second. You are welcome. It's beautiful to be here with you and your beautiful energy. No more questions. Thank you all, everybody. Next week, I'm joined by my friend Vanessa Mentor, and we're going to talk about the imposter complex and how it relates to our ability to love into our body. She's got some amazing work called Unrestrained. Join us. Thank you.